She thought he was just another quiet neighbor she could walk all over. She climbed his fence, swam in his pool, disrespected his home, and laughed when he told her to stop. But what she didn't know. He was a former police officer who dealt with criminals for 20 years, and he was about to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. Marcus Ellison had been through a lot in life. He served over 20 years as a police officer in a tough city. He had seen the worst of people, but also moments of real kindness. He had worn the badge with pride, kept his head down, did his job right. Never once had he fired his weapon in anger. Never once had he backed down when it mattered. When he finally retired, all he wanted was peace. So he moved out of the city, found a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs. Far from the sirens, the arguments, the tension, he bought himself a single-story house at the end of a street with a big backyard and a beautiful pool. It wasn't huge, but it was his. The house was painted white with blue shutters, and the pool glowed under the sun like something out of a magazine. Every morning, Marcus would sit by the edge of the pool with a cup of coffee and smile. He'd earned this. The first time he saw Deborah, she was watering plants in her front yard, just one house over. She wore big sunglasses, a sun hat, and a permanent frown. Her voice carried down the street like someone used to being heard. "Good morning," Marcus had said with a small wave. She didn't wave back, just nodded. Coldly, over the next few weeks, he saw her more. She complained to the mailman about late deliveries. She glared at neighborhood kids riding bikes. Every time Marcus tried to be polite, she responded with the same stiff, fake smile and no warmth behind her eyes. At first, he thought nothing of it. Not everyone's friendly. It's fine. Then one day, Marcus came back from grocery shopping and noticed something strange. There were wet footprints on the pavement around his pool. He hadn't been swimming that day. No animals could have made those prints. They were clearly human. He looked around, confused. Maybe it was a maintenance worker who came by mistake. A few days later, came out back early in the morning, and there she was. Deborah, lying on one of his pool chairs like it was her own. She had a book in her hand, sunglasses on, and her shoes off. She didn't even look surprised to see him. "Morning," she said casually. "Your pool gets such perfect sunlight. Hope you don't mind." Marcus stood still for a moment. He wasn't the type to explode, especially not over something small. But this didn't feel small. It was his home, his space. And she had entered. It like she owned it. "I do mind, actually," he said. "This is private property. Can't just come in without asking." She gave him a little laugh. "Relax. It's just sunbathing. It's no harm done, right? The last guy who lived here didn't care." "Well, I do," Marcus said. "Please don't come back here without permission." She rolled her eyes but got up slowly. All right. Don't get all worked up." He watched her walk out the side gate, the one she had clearly unlocked or left open. He made a mental note to check the gate later. That night, he installed a simple lock. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep the gate closed. For a while, it seemed to work. Days passed, and there were no signs of trespassing. Marcus relaxed. Maybe she had taken the message seriously. But then, 2 weeks later, he came home early from a lunch with a friend and saw her again. This time she had brought a towel, a drink, and even a small speaker playing soft music. She looked up and laughed like it was a joke. "Come on," she said, waving a hand. "You've got a whole pool to yourself. What's the harm in letting a neighbor enjoy it too?" "The harm," Marcus said firmly, "is that I told you not to come back here. It should have been enough." Her smile faded just a bit. "You're being dramatic," she muttered. Marcus didn't argue. He pointed to the gate. She sighed and gathered her things. After she left, he bought a better lock for the gate, this time with a code. He also put up a small sign, "Private property, no trespassing." The next morning, the sign was gone. It was torn off. Just a bit of the corner remained, fluttering in the wind. Now it was clear this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a challenge. She knew what she was doing. She didn't care. He thought about calling the police, but part of him hated the idea. After all, he had spent years on the force. He knew how neighbors could turn things ugly fast. He didn't want to be that guy either, so he tried again. He caught her in her driveway and spoke calmly. "I don't want trouble, Deborah. I really don't. But you've got to stay off my property. No more pool visits. No more sneaking in. I've locked the gate, and I'll be installing cameras next." She crossed her arms. "Is this because I'm white?" she asked, loud enough that a nearby neighbor looked up. Marcus blinked. "What? You didn't seem to mind until I was comfortable," she said with a sneer. "But now suddenly I'm a problem. That's interesting." He shook his head slowly. "No, this is because you're trespassing. Plain and simple." She didn't say anything else, just turned and walked back to her house like she had won something. That evening, Marcus sat on his back porch. He stared at the calm water in the pool, trying to enjoy the quiet. But something had shifted. The peace he'd worked so hard for was being tested, and it wasn't just about the pool. It was the way she looked at him, the way she acted like he didn't matter, his words were empty, like she still had power over something that belonged to him. He thought about his years in uniform, about how many times he had to stay calm while being disrespected, about how many times people had looked at him and assumed less, and now, even here in retirement, it was happening again. He wasn't angry, not really. He was disappointed, tired, but he wasn't going to let it go. He bought a motion-activated security camera and installed it at the back corner of the house facing the pool. He kept it quiet. No need to advertise it. He also replaced the torn sign with a bigger one: "Trespassers will be reported." Dan nailed it in harder. A few days passed. Nothing happened. Then, one Saturday afternoon, Marcus went out to run errands. He was gone for less than 2 hours. When he came back, something felt off. There were plastic cups in the trash bin, towel on the ground. And when he checked the camera footage on his phone, his heart sank. There she was, Deborah. Not just by herself. She had brought 4 other people into his backyard, laughing, swimming, drinking, sitting. On his patio chairs like it was a resort, one of them even knocked over a planter. Marcus sat down, watched the full 35 minutes of footage. He left right before he returned. He didn't say anything that day, but inside, something snapped. This wasn't just a woman being rude. This was someone who believed rules didn't apply to her, someone who thought she could walk into someone else's space, disrespect it, and walk away smiling. And she thought he would stay quiet. But Marcus wasn't that man. He knew how the system worked. He knew what he had to do. But he also knew something else. He wasn't just going to respond like a cop. He was going to respond like someone who had been silent long enough. He didn't call the police that night. Instead, he began to prepare. He had all the time in the world. And now he had a mission. Not revenge. Not payback. Just one simple goal. To make sure Deborah never stepped foot in his yard again, that she regretted ever thinking she could. Marcus didn't sleep much that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the video over and over in his mind. Deborah and her friends, laughing like they were at a public pool, drinking like they had every right to be there. She had brought strangers into his space, into his peace. It wasn't just rude, it was an insult, loud message. You can't stop me. But Marcus wasn't a man who acted without thinking. He wasn't the kind to scream through a fence or bang on a neighbor's door. That never worked. And it wasn't who he was. He'd been patient all his life. Smart, careful. That's how he survived his years in the force. That's how he handled dangerous people and ugly situations, by staying calm, by gathering facts, by choosing the moment that mattered. So the next morning, instead of yelling or sending angry texts, Marcus made coffee, sat down at his kitchen table, and opened his laptop. He started making a folder. He named it Deborah Pool Trespassing. Inside it, he saved all the camera footage. He added the video of the party, clips of her sitting by the pool, screenshots with timestamps, everything. He even included a note to himself, the date she first trespassed, what she said, what he said. He made copies of the footage on a USB drive. One for him, one for records. He didn't plan to use them yet. The new lock wasn't broken, but the code box had scratches, like someone tried to guess the combination. That was enough. He changed the code. Only he knew it now. After that, he went to the store and bought two things: a better security camera, one with night vision and two-way audio, and a new sign. This one was larger, bold, red and white. Private property trespassers will be prosecuted. He didn't put the sign in the corner. He nailed it right on the gate where no one could miss it. Then he took a walk through the neighborhood. Not to calm down, but to observe. Marcus wasn't just dealing with a rude neighbor. He was starting to believe Deborah thought she owned the block, and he wanted to know if others felt the same. He passed by Mr. Jenkins, the elderly man who lived 3 houses down. Watering his grass with slow, careful movements. "Morning," Marcus said with a nod. "Morning, son," Jenkins replied. "You settling in, all right?" Marcus paused, trying to say, "Has Deborah ever given you trouble?" Jenkins smirked. "That woman's a piece of work.
Yeah.
She called the HOA on me last year because I had a faded flag in the yard." "Flag? Can you believe that?" Marcus chuckled lightly, but it wasn't funny. He kept walking. Down the next block, he saw Alina, a young mother, pushing a stroller. She smiled when she saw him. "Hi, Mr. Ellison." "Alina, quick question. Has Deborah ever bothered you? Said anything strange?" Alina raised her eyebrows. "Oh, you mean Karen?" "Yeah. She called security on my cousin when he came to visit. Said he looked like he didn't belong here. He was just parking his car." Marcus nodded slowly. There it was again. That quiet pattern. Disrespect, control, thinly hidden under the excuse of keeping the neighborhood safe. By the end of the walk, he had spoken to 6 neighbors. 4 had stories. Nothing huge, but always the same tone. Deborah acted like she ran the place, always had a complaint, always had an excuse, and always targeted people who weren't like her. Marcus returned home and added those conversations to a new document. Community complaints. Wasn't official, but it painted a picture. Then he waited. For 2 days, nothing happened. The backyard stayed quiet. No signs of broken locks. No wet footprints. Marcus thought maybe she had gotten the message this time. But on the 3rd day, a delivery driver knocked on his door. "Sir," the young man said, holding a package, "are you the one who owns the house with the pool?" "I am," Marcus replied. "Well," the man said, scratching his head. "Some lady from next door yelled at me while I was parking. Said I couldn't block her driveway, but I was parked in front of your curb. Then she asked me why I was bringing packages here and who I was delivering for. Said she was part of some kind of neighborhood patrol." Marcus sighed. "Thanks for telling me." That was it. Deborah wasn't just trespassing. She was watching his house, trying to control what happened around it. Acting like she had power she didn't sow. Marcus opened his laptop again and wrote an official trespassing notice. Clear, formal language. He printed it, made 2 copies, and hand-delivered one to Deborah's mailbox. The other, he mailed certified to her address. Then he filed an online report with the local police department, and an emergency, just a non-urgent trespassing report. He attached photos, videos, and the document trail, and still, he didn't stop there. He went online and logged into the Homeowners Association website. Quietly, without making a fuss, he submitted a formal complaint to the HOA board. He included only the facts that Deborah had entered his property without permission, ignored posted signs, and brought guests without consent. No emotion, just truth. A few days later, an HOA representative emailed him back, "We will review the footage and schedule a meeting. Thank you for your documentation." Marcus smiled. It was starting to work. But Deborah, of course, didn't stay quiet for long. One morning, while Marcus was trimming bushes near the side fence, he heard her voice. "I hope you're not spying on me with those cameras," she said loudly, standing on her own side but clearly trying to start something. Marcus didn't even look up. "I only record what happens on my property. You think you're so smart, don't you?" she snapped. "Well, I talked to the HOA too. This neighborhood has always shared space." "You're being hostile." "You can talk to whoever you want," Marcus replied calmly. She scoffed. "This is why no one wants people like you here." Marcus turned his head slowly, eyes narrowing. He didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. The message was clear now. She wasn't just disrespectful, she was something else, something uglier, and she had no idea who she was dealing with. That evening, Marcus sat down to write again. This time, he drafted a letter to the city's community mediation services. Not because he expected it to work, but because it showed he had tried everything before taking stronger steps. He also spoke with a lawyer friend he had worked with in the past, who advised him on filing for a restraining order if the trespassing continued. By now, Marcus had a mountain of evidence: videos, witness statements, official reports, and patience. So much patience. 1 week later, a notice was placed on Deborah's door, a scheduled meeting with the HOA to address complaints against her. Marcus didn't go around celebrating. He just kept living his life, swimming in his pool, drinking his coffee, sitting under the sun, but he kept the cameras rolling. Then one Sunday afternoon, it happened again. The camera pinged his phone while he was out visiting his cousin. Motion detected, backyard. He opened the live feed. She shouted, "I've lived here longer than you. You don't belong here." She kicked one of the patio chairs and threw a rock into the pool. Then she turned and stormed out. That was it. That was the moment everything changed. Marcus didn't react. He didn't call her, didn't shout. He just downloaded the footage, forwarded it to the HOA and the police department, and then called his lawyer. It was time to go from warning to action. He knew Deborah thought she could do whatever she wanted, but she had just made a big mistake because Marcus wasn't just a neighbor, he was a retired officer, and he was done being quiet. Marcus watched the video one more time before saving it in a new folder called Final Evidence. Deborah's voice rang out through the speaker as she yelled at the camera. Her words were clear, her actions were clear. She had thrown a rock into his pool and kicked his patio chair. And now there was no more doubt. She wasn't just trespassing. She was acting with aggression. She was completely out of control. The next morning, Marcus didn't hesitate. He called the non-emergency line of the local police department and explained the full situation. The officer on the line already knew a little about the earlier report, but this new footage made everything more serious. Marcus was told to come in to give a formal statement and bring his evidence, said he would. Before he left, he printed everything: his photos, screenshots, the timeline he had typed, the official trespassing notice he had sent Deborah, and even copies of the complaints he had heard from other neighbors. He placed the USB with the latest video into a plastic case, labeled clearly with the date and time. He wasn't going in as a frustrated neighbor. He was going in prepared, like a professional. When Marcus walked into the station, the young officer at the desk greeted him politely. Marcus explained who he was, and within a few minutes he was taken to a small interview room. The officer who came in next introduced himself as Detective Reyes. He looked to be in his 40s, sharp and respectful. He took his seat and opened a small notebook. Marcus calmly told his entire story. From the first time Deborah entered his backyard without permission, to the moments she acted like she owned the place, to the multiple times she ignored his requests to stay away. He explained how he gave her warnings, how he added security measures, and how she still kept returning. Then, finally, he described what she had done most recently: yelling, threatening, and throwing a rock into his pool. When Marcus handed over the USB, Detective Reyes plugged it into a laptop and watched the footage silently. After a few minutes, he nodded. "She's definitely trespassing," Reyes said. "And that last part, with the rock and yelling, that can be considered vandalism and harassment. You did everything right, documented everything, warned her, filed a report, and even tried the HOA. That makes a big difference." Marcus leaned back. He felt relieved to hear someone say it plainly. "So what happens next?" he asked. "Well," Reyes said, "we can file an official criminal trespass warning. That means if she steps on your property again, she's no longer just breaking neighborhood rules, she's breaking the law. If she causes more damage or threats, we can press charges." Marcus nodded. That's exactly what he wanted. Not revenge. Just a line in the sand that couldn't be crossed again. That same day, 2 officers visited Deborah's house. Marcus stayed inside as they stood at her door. He didn't need to hear the conversation to know what was happening. He saw her expression. Through the window as she opened the door, wearing her usual fake smile, but that smile vanished quickly. Her face turned red. Her hands moved fast as she argued. But the officers stayed calm and handed her the warning paperwork. When they left, Marcus saw her slam the door behind them. A minute later, she stormed out to her front porch and glared across the street at Marcus's house. He didn't look away. He simply sipped his coffee and stared right back. For the first time, she realized he wasn't going to play nice anymore. Over the next week, Deborah stayed away from his yard. No footprints, no signs of her by the pool. It was quiet almost. Too quiet, but Marcus didn't let his guard down. He kept the cameras on, still checked the footage each night. And most of all, he kept documenting everything. A few days later, he got a call from the HOA office. The same representative who had emailed him earlier now wanted to schedule a formal hearing regarding Deborah's behavior. Several other neighbors had filed complaints, including the elderly man with a flag and the woman whose cousin had been harassed. With all the evidence Marcus provided, HOA had enough to move forward. The meeting was set for the following Thursday at the neighborhood clubhouse. When Marcus walked into the room, he noticed several other residents already there. Some looked surprised to see him. Others gave him small nods of support. The HOA board sat at the front 5 people, including the chairperson, tall man with silver hair and a calm voice. Deborah was already seated near the front. She wore a pressed blouse and had a thick folder in front of her, though it was clear she was nervous. Her eyes darted around. Her fingers tapped the edge of her chair. The chairperson called the meeting to order and read out loud the reason for the hearing. Multiple complaints of harassment, trespassing, and misuse of neighborhood spaces. Marcus was invited to speak first. He stood, walked slowly to the front, and began speaking, not with anger, not with drama, just with quiet power. He explained everything as history, why he moved there, what he expected from a peaceful neighborhood. Then he described Deborah's actions, one by one, with dates and proof. He showed the security footage, handed out copies of the written statements, and ended by saying one simple thing. I served for over 2 decades to protect people's homes, their peace, their safety. All I'll ask now is to enjoy mine. The room was silent. Deborah stood next. She tried to paint herself as a concerned neighbor. She said she thought the pool was shared space. She claimed Marcus had been hostile to her and that she only reacted to his attitude. But when asked if she had any evidence to support her claims, she had nothing, just vague stories. The board asked her questions. They asked why she ignored pad signs, why she entered someone's yard without permission, why she brought guests over to someone else's private property. Her answers were weak, full of excuses. After both sides spoke, the board voted. They found Deborah in violation of multiple HOA rules, including harassment, trespassing, and property damage. She was fined, warned, and placed on a watch list. If she broke the rules again, she could face higher fines or even legal action from the HOA itself. Marcus didn't smile or gloat. He simply thanked the board and walked out. He had stood up for himself. More importantly, he had stood up for every neighbor she had mistreated. After that meeting, something in the neighborhood shifted. People started waving more, saying hello. A few stopped by to thank Marcus personally. I've lived here 10 years, one man said, and nobody's ever stood up to her like that. You did the right thing. Marcus appreciated it, but he didn't let it change his routine. He still trimmed his bushes on Thursdays, still swam in his pool in the mornings, still drank coffee under the same sun he loved from the start. Deborah, meanwhile, stayed quiet. She didn't speak to Marcus again, didn't cross the property line. She avoided him completely. But Marcus knew people like her didn't change that easily, so he stayed alert. He kept his cameras running, his files updated. Because peace, he had learned, doesn't always come easily. Sometimes you have to fight for it, not with fists or rage, but with truth, patience, and courage. And when you do it right, it's not just your peace you protect, it's everyone's. The days after the HOA hearing were calm, but Marcus didn't trust the quiet. He had been a cop long enough to know that silence often came before trouble. People like Deborah didn't usually accept defeat easily. She had been loud, controlling, and sneaky for years. She wasn't just going to give that up. She might have been quiet now, but Marcus could feel that something was coming. Still, he enjoyed the peace while it lasted. He sat on his back porch in the mornings, sipping his coffee while the sun came up. He swam in his pool, just like before. For once, it felt like the space really belonged to him again. No strangers in the yard. No trash left behind. No Karen standing by the fence, pretending to be innocent. It was peaceful, and he appreciated every moment of it. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the hearing, Marcus heard a knock on the front door. When he opened it, he found a familiar face standing there, Detective Reyes. "Afternoon," the detective said. "Got a minute?" Marcus stepped aside and welcomed him in. They sat down at the kitchen table. "I just wanted to check in," Reyes said. "Make sure things have stayed calm since we issued that trespass warning." Marcus nodded. "She's been quiet. No sign of her in the yard. No new incidents." Reyes looked pleased. "That's good. Just know if anything changes. A small thing, you let us know. We've got the paperwork in place. One more step over the line, and we can press charges." "Appreciate that," Marcus said. After the detective left, Marcus checked his cameras again, just to be safe. All footage from the past few days looked clean. The motion sensors hadn't picked up anything unusual. Still, he had a strange feeling in his gut, and he trusted that feeling more than any camera. That night, around 2 a.m., Marcus was woken up by a soft ding from his phone. The security app had detected movement in the backyard. He sat up in bed, grabbed his phone, and opened the live camera feed. At first, he didn't see anything. The pool lights were off and the yard looked still. Then there it was, a shadow, moving slowly near the back fence. Marcus tapped to zoom in. He saw someone wearing dark clothes, sneaking through the bushes near the corner of the yard. It was hard to tell in the dark, but the figure's movements looked too careful to be random. This person wasn't just wandering. They were trying to avoid the cameras. Marcus quietly got out of bed. He pulled on his shirt and grabbed his phone and flashlight. He didn't rush. He moved like he used Tuzlo, quiet, controlled. He slipped out the side door and walked toward the backyard, staying close to the edge of the house. The figure hadn't noticed him yet, as Marcus stepped around the corner. He flicked on the flashlight and aimed it straight at the bushes. "Hey," he shouted loud and firm. "Step out now!" There was a sudden rustle, a flash of movement, and then dash silence. Marcus stood his ground. "I see you," he said. "Don't make me call the cops." After a few seconds, the figure slowly stood. Up from behind the bushes, it was Deborah. She looked shocked, frozen like a child caught stealing cookies. Marcus didn't say anything for a moment. He just stared at her with a hard, disappointed look. "What are you doing in my yard at 2 in the morning?" he finally asked. I wasn't doing anything," she stammered. "I was just looking for my cat." He got out. "You don't have a cat," Marcus replied calmly. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. She knew she was caught. "You want to explain to the police why you're sneaking around my backyard after being given a trespass warning?" "No, please. I'm sorry. I wasn't going to do anything. I just wanted to see if you were still watching me." Marcus raised his eyebrows. "Watching you? You've turned the neighborhood against me," she snapped suddenly, her voice rising. "Everyone treats me like a criminal now." "You embarrassed me?" "I didn't embarrass you," Marcus said. "You did that all by yourself." Deborah's face twisted with anger, but Marcus didn't flinch. He pulled out his phone and hit record. "You're standing on my private property, after dark, after being warned not to. I have it on video. I have it recorded now. If I turn this in, it's a crime. Do you understand?" She didn't answer. "You can walk away right now," Marcus continued. "But if you ever come back, if you ever step foot on this property again, I will press charges, and I'll make sure they stick. Because I'm not just a neighbor. Deborah, someone who knows exactly how the law works." Deborah's face turned pale. She didn't say anything else. She just turned around and walked slowly back to her own yard. Marcus waited until she was gone, then saved the video clip and filed it away. He didn't send it to the police that night, but he saved it just in case. The next morning, he added another layer to his security system. Motion lights brighter and wider, and a new camera, this one with a louder alarm. He wasn't playing anymore. He also sent an email to the HOA and attached the new footage. He didn't demand anything. He just said, "Sharing this for your records. Let me know if further steps are needed." The HOA replied quickly. They were shocked. The board agreed to hold a second emergency hearing. If Deborah broke the rules again, she could face serious consequences. Not just fines, but legal steps, involving property restrictions. Over the next few days, Marcus noticed something strange. Deborah didn't leave her house much anymore. Her car stayed in the driveway. Her porch, once covered in fake plants and decorations, looked plain and empty. The woman who once walked around like she owned the neighborhood now stayed inside, hiding behind curtains. People talked. Word got around. Neighbors whispered. Some laughed. Others shook their heads. A few even stopped by Marcus's place and quietly said, "We always knew something was off about her." Glad someone finally stood up to it. Marcus didn't brag. He didn't gloat. He just nodded politely and got back to his business. One day, while he was raking leaves in the front yard, he saw a real estate agent walk up to Deborah's door. She opened it, and they spoke quietly on the porch. Marcus couldn't hear what was said, but the message was clear. A for sale sign went up 2 days later. That evening, Marcus sat by his pool, listening to the water gently ripple. The lights from the cameras glowed softly in the corners. The wind moved through the trees, cool and quiet. He looked at the fence and smiled. It had taken time, patience, effort, but finally, Deborah had realized something. You can only push a good man so far, especially one who knows the rules better than you do. It had been nearly a month since the for sale sign appeared in Deborah's yard. Marcus didn't say anything about it to the neighbors, but he noticed how quickly everything started to change after that. People began to walk by her house with curiosity, stopping to look at the sign or glancing through the windows. Some whispered, others smirked. Deborah's once confident presence had vanished. She no longer shouted across lawns, no longer gave disapproving stares, and no longer stepped out of her house during the day. It was like she had become a ghost in the very neighborhood she once tried to control. Marcus kept his routine the same. He still cleaned the pool in the mornings, trimmed the bushes once a week, and checked his security footage each night. But now he noticed something new. Peace. Real peace. It wasn't just the silence or the lack of trouble, it was the feeling that the storm had finally passed. He could breathe easier, sleep deeper, and enjoy his own space without wondering who might be lurking behind the fence. One day, as Marcus was watering the plants in his front yard, a young couple parked their car in front of Deborah's house. A woman stepped out first, followed by a man carrying a clipboard. They smiled as they looked around the street, taking in the well-kept homes, the clean sidewalks, and the quiet atmosphere. Marcus gave them a polite nod. "Hi there," the man called out. "You live around here?" Marcus nodded. "Across the street, we're thinking of buying this house," the woman said, pointing at Deborah's. "How is the neighborhood?" Marcus took a moment before replying. "It's peaceful now," he said honestly. "Great for people who want a quiet life. Just respect people's space, and you'll be fine." The couple seemed pleased with the answer. They toured the house, and stayed for a long time. A few days later, the for sale sign had a red sticker across it sold. That night, Marcus sat outside with a glass of iced tea and thought about everything that had happened. Deborah had come into his life like a storm, loud, rude, entitled. She had tried to walk all over him, thinking he'd stay quiet like the others. But she had underestimated the man she was dealing with. Marcus wasn't just a homeowner. He was a man who had spent over 20 years serving the public, protecting people's rights, and standing up to those who thought they were above the law. Deborah thought she could get away with using his pool, disrespecting his property, and ignoring all the rules. She didn't know she was dealing with someone who had seen the worst of people and wasn't afraid to push back. In the days that followed, neighbors started becoming more open with Marcus. One elderly woman, Mrs. Carter, brought over a pie as a thank you gift. I was always scared to say anything to her, she admitted. But after you stood up to her, things changed for all of us. Another man, Jim, from 2 streets over, shared a story about how Deborah once tried to get his wife in trouble with the HOA for hanging laundry outside. She was always watching everyone like she ran the place, he said. We're glad she's finally leaving. Marcus listened to all the stories, not with pride, but with a quiet understanding. It wasn't just about the pool. It never was. It was about power, control. Some people, like Deborah, think that they can push others around because they talk louder or act like they're always right. But Marcus had learned long ago that calm strength beats loud arrogance every time. The day Deborah finally moved out was warm and sunny. A moving truck pulled up early in the morning, and for hours, workers carried boxes and furniture out of the house. Deborah stood on the porch for most of it, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding her face. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't wave. Goodbye. When she finally got into her car and drove off, no one watched her leave. No one cared. But Marcus did watch from behind his sunglasses, leaning against the porch rail, calm and still. Not out of spite, but out of finality. He wasn't angry anymore, just satisfied. She was gone, and peace had returned. The new neighbors moved in 2 weeks later. A young couple with a baby and a golden retriever. They introduced themselves right away. Marcus helped them carry in a few boxes and even gave them a copy of the neighborhood contact list he had created after the whole incident. They were grateful. You really did that? The man asked, impressed. Made a whole contact list? Marcus chuckled. Let's just say I like to stay ahead of things. From that point on, the neighborhood slowly started to come together. People began to talk more, wave more, and trust more. A few families organized weekend cookouts. The HOA even held a small block party that summer, and for the first time, everyone seemed truly connected. Marcus was invited to every event, every gathering. People valued him not just for what he did, but for who he was. But Marcus never let the good times distract him completely. He still kept his cameras, still checked the feeds, still had that folder marked Deborah evidence backed up in the cloud and on a drive in a safe. Because if life had taught him anything, it was this peace isn't free. Sometimes you have to fight for it. Not with fists or rage, but with intelligence, patience, and the power of the truth. You protect your home not just with locks and fences, but with strength of character and a refusal to be bullied. Months passed. And one evening, Marcus received a letter in the mail. It was from the city. A formal recognition letter thanking him for his role in helping improve the safety of the neighborhood. Apparently, the police department had noted a drop in complaints and calls from his area since his original report. Detective Reyes had submitted his name for commendation. Marcus didn't smile when he read the letter. He just nodded. It wasn't the kind of award you hang on a wall. It was just one more reminder that doing the right thing, no matter how small it seems, can create real change. Later that night, as the sky turned orange and the crickets began to sing, Marcus stepped out into his backyard. He looked at the pool, now quiet and clean. He walked to the edge, sat down, and dipped his feet into the water. He thought about how close he came to losing his peace. How one woman's arrogance almost ruined the sanctuary he had worked so hard to build. But he also thought about how he reclaimed it through calm actions, solid evidence, and a will to not be pushed around. That pool, that yard, that house, they were his. And more than that, he had earned them. Marcus leaned back, arms resting behind him, and smiled as the stars came out. There was no shouting anymore, no arguing, no truspa, just the sound of water, wind, and the soft, quiet beat of freedom. And he knew, deep in his bones, that no one would ever take that away from him again.